Hi, thanks for joining me today, where I'm going to give you feedback on the ninth quarter of the investment tracking. Now, if you've just joined us, I've started tracking 6 investments about 2 years and 1 quarter ago, the 1st of April 2020. And I set out to prove that the money market is actually not an investment, because many times clients and people tell us that they would rather be in the money market, as we are now in very difficult times, turbulent markets. They think that it's better to be in the money market. And yes, there are times that it would be better for you to be in the money market, but we also know that market timing actually adds very little to the eventual investment outcome. So we started looking at 6 investments, and we looked at the South African equity market, and there we used the Allan Gray Equity Fund. Then we used the money market fund, the Allan Gray Money Market Fund. We also utilized a pure offshore equity fund, where we used Portfolio Metrics' offshore fund. We also included Kruger Rands. We then included Bitcoin, and we also included a listed property company, Prudential, which is now called M&G, and we invested virtually R1,000 in each one of these. So where we are at this point in time, if you look at here, the 1st of July 2022, we can see that our original R6,000 is now at 8,790. But we can see that the 1st of April 2021, our 6,000 was 15,000. And it was virtually all because of Bitcoin that shot up from R1,000 to 9,148, where we see it's now right down to 2,500. So Bitcoin had a huge drop, and we look at that in a minute. Also, our Kruger Rands very quickly lost value, but we see there's been a steady increase in them, but we're not back to the R1,000, so we still have lost money there. All of the others have actually had a steady increase, but then we see right at the end from 2022, they drop down, and we see that when we look at this chart. But just to put it more into perspective, we look at Bitcoin on its own. There we can see here the 1st of April 2021, Bitcoin shot up to just over 9,000. Our 1,000 went up to more than 9,000, but subsequently, there was a small increase, but we dropped right down to the 2,500 level. But if you want to look at all of the others, we have to strip out Bitcoin. And here we can see our South African equity. We also can see the Prudential, the property fund, and then we see the offshore funds as well. But all of them basically started losing money from the 2nd quarter of 2022. There we can see the money market slowly, and yes, it's beaten the Kruger Rands. The Kruger Rands had an uptick, and also we see that the money market has beaten the offshore investment over this period of time. But please remember, it's just basically just a little bit more than 2 years that we've been tracking these investments. So it's very, very important for us to see this in perspective. What I now want to look at is just when we look at what the markets did over time. All right, so what I want you to see on this chart is the fact that when we look at from 1975 right through to now, and we look at it on a logarithmic scale, if you've invested into this market, you would have had a return annually of 13.04%. That is great in terms of a long-term return, but we see every couple of years we see the cyclical move in the markets, losing 47% in 1976, 45% again in the early 80s. We also saw it was the decline of the gold price, and then we see the steady rise but also the declines. And I understand when people get worried when the markets fall significantly, like 42% in 2008. Then we had a steady rise, and it was basically this period where people reckoned that being in the money market would have been better. We then saw the market dropping with COVID. We actually thought that the market was going to increase, but we didn't know of COVID. And then we saw again the steady rise. So if we look at this chart, we can see that there's always cycles in the market, and that shouldn't worry us too much, because we can understand that cycles is a normal part of the investment fraternity. So this is just a quick feedback. We know that the rand is actually blown out a little bit, so on the next feedback we're going to see that what has happened subsequent to the end of June, which was the 9th quarter. So thank you for joining us, and we'll give you feedback in just a while.